Every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, June 20th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, in studio, executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen, also host of the weekly round for that.
Weekly roundup. I'm competing with myself today.
Exactly.
In fact, we have somebody else on the roundup.
We'll talk about that in a moment. Also on the program today.
Wait a minute. Also, the co-host of the Organized Money podcast, organizedmoney.fm.
Organizedmoney.fm. Also on the program today, Trump supposedly to decide Iran attack within 2 weeks, as U.S. spy agencies say Iran not even decided yet on pursuing nuclear weapons. Iran responds as missiles land in Israel as its Iron Dome becomes more porous. Gaza, meanwhile, suffering an Israeli-made drought, according to UNICEF. Appeals court rules Trump can keep the National Guard in L.A. for now. Trump's Medicaid gutting reconciliation bill gets a bird bath. Meanwhile, DHS puts new limits on congressional oversight visits to detention centers. James Clyburn joins Palantir, right-wing billionaires, and Michael Bloomberg in endorsing Andrew Cuomo. The New York mayor's race is only 4 days away. ICE denied access to Dodger Stadium. As Trump gears up for war, Democrats wondering at which remote desert island are Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer vacationing. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Emma Vigeland out today, and not necessarily filling in for her. I mean, he would have been here anyways.
I was planning on it.
But David Dayen, the executive editor of the American Prospect. David, your camera's right in front of me.
Where am I? Where am I looking? Right there?
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
how you doing? Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Welcome. Is this your first time? Not your first time in studio.
No, I've been in studio a few times.
It's the first time you've been sitting in that seat.
Well, there you go. So there's a first time for everything.
And we coordinated today. It's a casual Friday, and
it's always casual Friday, as what I was just told in the open.
There you go.
For me, it is. Anyway.
But in terms of the way that
this is dressed up Friday for me.
It really is, and we've sort of crossed paths. Let's get right into this because we've got a lot to talk about. Obviously, was there ever a busier time in the news? I mean,
my goodness. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
I mean, I remember the days when you would do the news briefs for Fire Dog Lake. That was like a
different life.
Many moons ago. Yeah. But we never had anything with like these many sort of competing stories simultaneously.
Well, one thing I said or saw said this week was that the Democratic Party was in the midst of forgetting the lessons of the Iraq War and the global financial crisis in the same week, right? So, compressing that time along with everything else that's going on, obviously, is quite stunning.
And we're going to talk about that Genius Act, and we're going to be talking about, obviously, the Democrats, or at least Democratic leadership, and maybe even just broadly speaking, Democrats' response to the potential for imminent war with Iran. But first, let's get a sense of what the timing is of in Iraq, we had the FU, which was the Friedman unit.
Right.
That was 6 months
Right.
when everything was going to become clear at any given point.
Right.
We
The
were
next
just
6 months are crucial. That
lurching.
was Tom Friedman, New York Times columnist. That was his ever-present. And it literally went on for about 5 years, he would say, at periodic times. The next 6 months in Iraq are crucial.
And the amazing thing, too, about it is you would think if it's just 5 years, that would be only 10 Friedman units.
That's right.
But they overlapped many times.
Right. Every couple months.
Every couple of months,
he'd
it would
reset.
be another 6 months. So there could have been something like 25 or 30 FUs during the course of that Iraq war.
Right.
Donald Trump has something a little bit more. Donald Trump has sped up the.
It's more like what my contractor tells me.
Is that right? Okay.
Right? Like, we're going to finish your kitchen in 2 weeks. There's no question we're going to have it done completely in 2 weeks.
And you're still eating
there
off of paper plates
3 months
later.
Yeah.
Here is Caroline. Is it Caroline? Caroline Levitt at the White House briefing room or press briefing yesterday.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
There's about 45 different qualifiers in that.
Right. Concept of a plan.
There's a concept of a plan there, and we have heard the use of 2 weeks many times by Donald Trump. In fact, here is a compilation.
There it is.
That was
doing this Daily Show style.
Yeah, who put this together? We found it somewhere online. Here it is. This is maybe it's Blue Georgia that did this compilation of Donald Trump and his leaning on 2 weeks.
You trust President Putin? You know, in about 2 weeks.
In your mind, is Ukraine doing enough to get this?
I'd rather tell you in about 2 weeks from now.
Do you still believe that Putin actually wants to end the war?
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks. We've got the plan largely completed, and we'll be filing it over the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to be having a news conference in about 2 weeks. I will make that decision, I would say, over the next 2 weeks.
And I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next 2 weeks.
At some point in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm going to be setting the deal. Over the next 2, 3 weeks. In about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. You'll be hearing about it a lot more in the next 2 weeks. Maybe in 100 years from now, maybe in 2 weeks.
I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
It's a stalling tactic, and more often than not, people forget that he had said 2 weeks, and it gets reset. But there are, in this instance, there is a lot of movement in terms of naval activity and in terms of Air Force activity, getting set up. I would imagine Marines too, getting set up so that in the event that there is a strike, protecting the many, many bases, military assets, commercial assets that the United States has around the world. That's what he could be setting up for. I mean,
I think also, Trump certainly believes in what was known under Nixon as the madman strategy, right? You have to believe that I'm so crazy that I'm going to drop a bunker buster bomb, a nuclear bomb, whatever it is, on you so that you'll come to the table and negotiate. And so, there's a bit of gunboat diplomacy here where he's setting up the guns, and he wants you to think that he's crazy enough to do it. So I think that's certainly part of this.
The irony is, of course, that they were in the middle of negotiations when Israel, so it's unclear to me what it is. Like, I have not heard what the
and also
an articulation of what the roadblock was in coming to.
I don't know that there was one because it was.
Well, that's my point. It's like,
clear,
what is the?
But
what,
it's clear what happened is that Israel kind of jumped the gun. They don't want this negotiation to happen at all, and so they started bombing. And Trump saw his buddies on Fox News put a lot of neocons on saying, "Isn't this great?" and thought, "Hey, I want to take credit for that, so maybe I'll get involved." And so, I don't know that it was. I don't think the sequence was there's an impasse and therefore I'm going to start bombing. The sequence was we're negotiating. Israel disrupts the negotiation, and Trump, who has the brain of a gnat, moved to Israel's side.
And then, but what is the ask? If the theory is it's the madman theory, I'm using this madman tactic as a way of attempting to.
Well, I mean, I think there were some impasse, not full impasses, but maybe things that were holding up the negotiation. And one is, I think, enriching the uranium on Iranian soil. I think that was one of the things that the U.S. wanted that Iran was, not willing to give up. So, I mean, certainly there are points within the negotiation wasn't over. And so having the most leverage in the negotiation, if you believe that this is what this does to Trump, means that if you start threatening, then maybe you get a better deal.
What also strikes me is the idea. I mean, people have compared this obviously to the Iraq invasion. Mm-hmm. And what strikes me is that, and you recall this, I'm sure, it was a 2-year project. I mean, literally, maybe a year and a half from December of 2001 to February, March, I guess, ultimately, of 2003.
Right.
And the machinations to build support for invading Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11. There were Dick Cheney's leaking through Scooter Libby to the New York Times, and then going back and citing the New York Times on television to build this support. You had Colin Powell essentially destroy his credibility for, really the rest of his career. He spent trying to make up for this, going up and lying and holding a vial of anthrax at the UN. Yeah, Condi Rice talking. You don't want the
smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
To be a mushroom cloud.
Right.
You had Thomas Friedman going out there talking about how we were going to bring free. I mean,
the liberal hawks. They were building bipartisan support. You had Kenneth Pollock, the case for war, and there was all this other discussion. But I think you have to see this as almost cumulative, right? Because, part of that was how David Frum, our friend now, right? David Frum writing a State of the Union address, talking about an axis of evil. And that axis of evil included Iran. It included North Korea,
Iraq, and North Korea.
And Iran. And so all of this sort of built-in suppositions that animated the war with Iraq are still active, particularly around we have to stop. It's an existential threat if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. That is an unstated premise that has gone through the last 20 years. So when this flares up again, you can just pick that talking point right off the top of the pile.
The difference is that the entire, it seems, U.S. intelligence apparatus, across whatever it is, the 18 agencies have said they have no nuclear weapon program and haven't since 2003.
Right.
And so it seems like it would be a hard sell, but it also feels like it's completely almost irrelevant. Put up this poll. You can see Democrats, independents, Republicans. This is, do you think the U.S. military should get involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran? there is no party, no demographic that is a full yes beyond 23 points for Republicans. It's 15 for Democrats and 11 for independents. And then overwhelming majorities for the answer being no. And yet it doesn't seem like it will make a difference per se.
I mean,
but I guess we'll tell.
It certainly doesn't make a difference on the Republican side, and we shouldn't let them off the hook for that. Tom Massey, the libertarian congressman from Kentucky, has a war powers resolution to say that only Congress can determine, whether or not the U.S. goes to war, and no Republicans have signed on. Zero. So the realignment, the Republican realignment, is one guy on this issue. And then on the Democratic side, you have
that seems
a handful.
almost like not a realignment.
It's not.
Yeah.
And on the Democratic side, you have a few dozen who have said, both in the House and the Senate. Tim Kaine is doing a war powers resolution. Bernie Sanders put out a No War with Iran Act. And many House Democrats have signed on to Massey's resolution. But at the top level of the party, that's certainly not what you're seeing among Democrats.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because you and Ryan Grimm from Drop Site News and a couple other folks that you both work with did some great reporting on the dynamic that exists in Congress right now in terms of whether they're getting out there and articulating an anti-Iran war, essentially, narrative. But first, let me read a couple of things from our sponsors, David, if you will. First off,
you don't want me to read these because I'll just butcher them completely.
No.
So why don't you do it?
Well, and I don't know if you use these products. I do.
We'll find out.
You're getting there. You're not quite as old as I am, and so you probably don't have your doctor telling you about your vitamin deficiencies that my doctor has. I had a real problem with vitamin D for a long time. There are a lot of multivitamins out there, but Ritual is different. They're essential for men 18 plus. Multivitamin is science-backed, made with traceable and bioavailable key ingredients. They share the source, the supplier, and the scientific research backing each active ingredient so you know what you're putting in your body and why. I've told this story many times. For a long time, my doctor, I would get my annual physical. My doctor would say, you need more vitamin D. I would go immediately to the store. I would buy some vitamin D. I would take it. I would run out, and then I would never take it again after the first bottle. With Ritual, they send it to me at the end of every month. I never go without it. It is also, they make it less painful on your stomach. I don't know how to articulate that. And so the other problem I would have is I would always remember to take my vitamins when I had not eaten. And then I would say, well, I got to wait until I've eaten. And then I would forget to take them after I've eaten. With Ritual, you can take them at any time, and they are easy on your stomach. It's a science-backed multivitamin for men 18 plus. They also have one for guys my age, a little bit over, 50 and over. I think you might qualify for that, David. We don't need to talk about that.
I do qualify for that.
High quality, traceable key ingredients in clean, bioavailable forms. They omega-3 DHA to support heart and brain health. Vitamin D3 to support normal muscle and immune function, which my doctor no longer tells me I'm deficient on, incidentally. Their Men 18 Plus multivitamin contains 10 key nutrients in 2 delayed release capsules designed for optimal absorption per day. It's designed to be gentle on the stomach. As I told you, there's a minty essence in every bottle that helps make your taking your multis actually enjoyable. Essential for Men is third-party tested for heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified, so you know you can trust what you're putting into your body. You'd be surprised what comes from other countries. I'm not going to say specifically, particularly in this era, but So you can get your vitamins with heavy metals. That's not good. Ritual multivitamins are vegan, non-GMO, project verified, gluten and major allergen free, and made traceable. It's HSA, FSA eligible with a seamless checkout experience so you can save when you shop with pre-tax dollars. Essential for Men is quality multivitamin from a company you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/majority. That's ritual.com/majority for 25% off your first month. Also, sponsoring the program, one of my favorite sponsors, sunsetlakesabadee.com. Use the coupon code Left is Best. You will get 20% off all of their products. Have you ever tried any Sabadee?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have not.
You got to be careful about how you pronounce it.
My wife did. It wasn't CBD. It wasn't Sabadee or
yes,
whatever.
thank you.
It was this synthetic
that's
stuff.
A huge
and
mistake.
it turned her in. She basically sat in a room motionless for about 2 hours.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about they've got stuff. They've got all sorts of tinctures. They've got some that are geared towards sleeping aids, which very helpful. Right. They have stuff for your pet. They have Sabadee infused fudge and coffee.
Is that the French version, Sabadee?
Well, it's the YouTube French version.
YouTube-friendly French version.
Exactly. They also have smokables that some people mix in with their other smokables, or they have pre-rolls, something nice after a big dinner maybe. It's all third-party tested. They use integrated pest management. They don't use any pesticides. They are movement partners. They have donated tens of thousands of dollars to things like refugee relief, strike funds, Planned Parenthood, carceral reform. They've engaged in mutual aid. And this month, as it's Pride Month, our friends at Sunset Lake Sabadee are showing up for the LGBTQIA plus community. They believe that everybody deserves the full spectrum of love, respect, and equal rights. And they put those beliefs into action. For the third year running, they sponsored and participated in their local Essex Pride Festival. They're up in Vermont. And they recently ran a fundraiser for the Pride Center of Vermont, making a $1,000 donation. Our farmer friends at sunsetlakesabadee.com are committed to making real impact by supporting organizations that uplift and celebrate the LGBTQIA plus community, not just in June, but all year long. As always, use the code LEFTISBEST. Save 20% off at sunsetlakesabadee.com on all their farm fresh Sabadee products for people and pets. Okay, so David Dayen.
Here I am.
It's becoming clear to some folks that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have been completely absent in terms of pressing the brakes on what appears to be, well, it definitely is the Israelis trying to bring, to pull America into this war. Beyond the fact that we have provided all essentially the weaponry that they have used so far. This piece in the New York Times by Peter Beinart, where are Schumer and Jeffries? Trump might take the U.S. to war. Where are Schumer and Jeffries? Well, we sort of know where they are.
Well, we actually know explicitly now because Jeffries, as we were going live here, Jeffries released a new statement on developments in the Middle East, is what he calls it. And it starts off with the boilerplate that you hear from a lot of members of Congress, particularly, supporters of Israel. Iran is a sworn enemy of the U.S., can never be permitted to become a nuclear-capable power. Israel has a right to defend itself against escalating Iranian aggression, and our commitment to Israel's security remains ironclad. Now, he goes on to say that the authority to declare war belongs solely to the U.S. Congress, and that Trump should refrain from engaging in military action without the explicit approval of the House, and that aggressive diplomacy resulting in an agreement that permanently halts Iran's nuclear aspirations is the most appropriate course of action at this time. That is a statement that came out literally at around noon today. But you see how the sequencing is of it, that it starts with everything that Israel kind of wants you to know about this situation, that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon, and that the U.S. is steadfast in its alignment, its stance with Israel. And then it gets into sort of, the process stuff. But what it sounds to me like is that, there is this sense that because of war powers, that the Congress should be the one to authorize war with Iran, not the president. And it seems like Jeffries would be fully willing to do that as long as he has the opportunity.
As long as he has the opportunity to vote for it. We should also say, and there's a couple of things that in that statement that I find sort of fascinating. One being Israel has the right to defend itself against escalating Iranian aggression. It is so hard to wrap my head around that. Like, how is escalating Iranian aggression defined here when Israel attacked them, presumably preemptively, but according to them? But of course, it was not preemptively because there's been zero evidence that they were preempting anything at all. I mean, the idea that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. If anything, this is encouraging Iran to get a nuclear weapon, something that our own intelligence agencies have been saying they don't seem to be terribly interested in doing it.
The interesting corollary to Trump saying, I'll make this decision in 2 weeks, is Benjamin Netanyahu saying that Iran is 3 months away from delivering a nuclear weapon.
Starting in the early 90s.
That's right. He said for 30 years, Iran has been a few weeks or a few months away from having a nuclear weapon. And so you can define escalating aggression as their alleged activities towards getting a nuclear weapon, which they've apparently been doing for 30 years. They're just not very good at it. They're going to get there, but it's monkeys on keyboards apparently over in Iran. So you have to believe the kind of mania that Netanyahu has about Iran's activities in order to believe that there is any escalating aggression.
And can we talk about Chuck Schumer? It couldn't have been more than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Putting out a video, of all the issues that the Democrats should be expending their energies on, putting out a video complaining that Trump was too close to a deal with Iran.
Yeah.
What kind of bull is this?
And that it involved a side deal and no side deals.
Yeah.
No side deals. That's the problem. We
will win.
I didn't know you were going to go full Schumer there.
Believe me, I'm going full Schumer. This is just... It is borderline insane. And you guys at The Prospect with Drop Site did some amazing reporting here on what AIPAC has been involved in over the past, I guess, couple of weeks.
Well, really, since the first bombs were falling in Tehran.
No side deals.
So since that time, AIPAC, which is, the large political action committee, they really got to work immediately contacting members of Congress and telling them, you have to put out a statement that says that you stand with Israel, that, Iran must never have all the things kind of that Jeffrey said in his preamble. Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. Israel has a right to defend itself against escalating aggression, and we stand with Israel. Those are kind of the talking points that Iran wanted members of Congress to get out. And my sources tell me that they were bombarding members of Congress with these messages, particularly House Democrats. And one of them got 100 calls from AIPAC saying, you have to put out a message, you have to put out a message, you have to put out a message.
So what is it when AIPAC calls a member of Congress 100 times.
Right.
What, like, is that on their personal cell phone? Like, is it a text? Like, how does that?
It could be any number of things. Yeah, I mean, I think on the cell phone, I think text of members. Maybe there's chief of staff, maybe to people in their office, their legislative director, but giving the overwhelming sensation, and it might not be from the same person. It might be from allies. It might be from donors who are allied with AIPAC, but this overwhelming sense that you have to do this, you have to do this, and. So, when I heard about that, we put a bunch of people to work and said, all right, let's go to every House Democrat. Let's look at their website. Let's look at their social media. Did they do this? Did they align themselves with AIPAC and Israel by saying, by using these talking points? And what we found was that 28 members of Congress, House Democrats in particular, issued statements exactly saying, I stand with Israel.
That's an incredible coincidence.
28.
That they would use those exact same talking points
words
at that exact time.
Those exact words. Another 35 expressed unequivocal support for Israel without using those magic words, stand with Israel, but giving the same sentiment. And then another 16 expressed what I would call softer support with Israel. Maybe not the same inflammatory language, maybe not exactly the same talking points, but giving the sense that they stand with Israel. So that's almost 100 members of the House caucus, and was within a few days. Sometimes by the next day, the day after the bombing started. That was AIPAC basically having a metric to say, see, the Democrats stand with us, they stand with Israel.
There's another way of expressing that, and it seems to me it's like, well, there's some side deals are okay.
Right.
That's crazy.
Didn't side deals end the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Side deals, I mean, we're talking about Iranian ones.
And I think there are two things to say here. Number one, this is AIPAC wanting to maintain their dominance in the Democratic Party. One of the things they did on the member statements that did not follow their talking points, that blamed Trump for his failure of diplomacy, or that said that, the Congress is the one who determines whether or not the U.S. goes to war or whatever, that AIPAC would put out a statement in response to any of those statements that fell short of those, their expectations, basically, saying, consistent pattern, J Street endorsees issue anti-Israel statements. J Street is the pro-Israel, pro-peace organization. Right. And they are jockeying for power with they don't want J Street to get too much of a foothold in the Democratic Party. And so AIPAC not only wants a bunch of statements that they can point to and say, see, they're following our lead here, but they also want to cut off the idea that there would be any support for J Street within the Democratic Party.
I mean, I think this is, I think on some level, that classic Roadrunner thing where the coyote runs off the cliff and makes it out about 40 feet or whatever it is, and is still running and doesn't realize there's no road there anymore. And I think we are, I don't know if it's a year or two away, maybe less, maybe more, of that happening in the Democratic Party. And I think there's going to be I think that's going to end up being a lot more difficult for Democrats to be able to sort of kowtow to AIPAC, regardless of how much money they bring in down the road. And
especially if an actual strike happens and it's as catastrophic as we think.
And because, it's almost guaranteed, it seems to me, that if the United States explicitly attacks Iran, because frankly, I think it's very hard to imagine that U.S. has not been involved in these attacks in some fashion or another, but they have enough deniability that Iran can also deny to itself that the U.S. is involved. But in the event that there is an explicit involvement by the U.S., it seems to me there's no way to avoid at least significantly more involvement. And I don't know what that looks like. I can't imagine it involves, any type of ground invasion. That would be absurd. But the idea of a protracted, bombing, and then, some form of international terrorism seems to be, I would imagine, is on the table if the United States start getting involved in that. And, who knows what they're, but there's a lot.
Mean, you were there in 2002 when the majority of Democratic senators and I believe a substantial number of House members, House Democrats, gave President Bush the authority to go into Iraq. And then the next year, in those presidential primary races, you had Howard Dean come out very early and said, what I want to know is, that was the speech. It was the "What I Want to Know Is" speech. It was at the California Democratic Party convention. He said, what I want to know is, why are the Democrats the ones who are cheerleading for this war in Iraq?
Yep.
Why is our party collaborating with Republicans? And that really, I think, set the stage for about 15 years or 20 years of a sea change among at least a substantial faction of the Democratic Party. And of course, in 2008, who wins the Democratic nomination? Someone who was early out in front against the war of Iraq. As a state senator. At the end of the day, you are going to look back at what you did here as a Democrat in elected office in Washington. And if you kind of oppose this rush to war, you're going to find that the public really supports you, and you're going to look pretty good for a long time. And if you were in favor of it, you're going to find yourself having to explain yourself for the next number of years.
Yeah, it's interesting. If we have time, we should touch on the New York mayoralty race, because I know you guys are doing some real coverage. Actually, with Whitney Wimbish is coming out with a piece, and she, of course, writes for our AM Quickie as well as.
And now she's our new staff writer, doing a great job. And she's been focused on the race. I mean, it's GOTV weekend here.
Yes.
What do you think's going to happen?
Well, we'll get to that in a moment, because I want to talk about the big bill. But I do think the interesting thing we should also say about the invasion of Iraq is that starting as early as the Clinton administration, there was that similar buildup in terms of providing all of the sort of sales pitches and whatnot that you would need to invade Iraq. But it took the Bush administration, 14 months to do it. In this instance, I think we have now been trained that the idea of the U.S. unilaterally doing this with Iran, I haven't seen. We're not having large anti-war protests at this point, in the way that we did with Iran. It took months for that stuff to happen last time. This could happen so quickly that we're already involved before we know it.
That's where you started this. That it was a year and a half, build up,
sales pitch.
A real sales pitch effort. And here it's just sort of a given. Oh, we're going to bomb Iran.
Yep.
And
well, we shall see. In the meantime, there's also another bomb, essentially, and it is winding its way through the Senate. This reconciliation bill, and you have a piece out just, I think, yesterday about what it's just going to do to not just to Medicaid. And Deborah, I don't even know if you touch on Medicare in there because of the sequestration that could potentially follow from it.
There are actually a couple things with Medicare, but yeah.
The entire sort of medical system that's going to be I don't know if there's ever been a single bill that I remember, at least in the 20 years that I've been doing this, that has such dramatic implications for daily life for so many millions of Americans in a negative way.
It's going to affect every American at some level. And as you've talked about, the fact that we're in this news vortex going on right now, where we have immigration stuff and protests and this Iran situation with Israel, it's not getting a lot of attention.
No.
And it's hard to get traction on it. We're doing a daily or almost daily newsletter called Trump's Beautiful Disaster, because, the bill's called the Big Beautiful Bill. So we went back to the 90s with a 311 reference, Beautiful Disaster, a song by a band there. But anyway, we're covering it because of this impact. But it's been hard to break through. And I don't think people realize the extent to which this will have such a massive amount of disruption, particularly in the health system. So right now, the situation is that a number of rural hospitals in particular are struggling to survive. There is a report that says 1/3 of all rural hospitals, and that's about 700 hospitals across the country, are at risk of closure right now. And if you take $1 trillion out of the healthcare system, which is kind of what this will do, mainly by cutting Medicaid, that's the primary thing, and moving 11 million people off the Medicaid rolls, you're going to get a situation where suddenly the budgets of these rural hospitals will just go into the toilet. I mean, Medicaid is often the biggest line item in these budgets. You're talking about a program that has 73 million people
for revenue
right now. For revenue. And, some hospitals complain about low reimbursement rates in Medicaid, but there are programs that boost that are also being attacked in this bill. There's this program where the federal government will kick in extra money so that doctors will accept Medicaid and hospitals will accept Medicaid. And that was cut in the Senate bill.
That is the provider tax, right?
It's not quite the provider tax. It's a different thing called state-directed payments. But those have been attacked in the Senate bill.
Don't those provider taxes pay for those state-directed payments?
No, the state-directed payments come from the federal government. The provider tax is a separate thing that is a way for states to get more resources in Medicaid. And what happens is the state taxes a hospital. Let's say the state taxes a hospital $100. But what they say is also, we'll reimburse you more through our Medicaid program by $100. So the hospital is held harmless. They're paying a tax, but they're getting the money back. But when you increase those rates and the state pays $100, Medicaid is a federal state program. So the federal government is kicking in some of that money. So by doing this circulation, it's a way to get the federal government to pay a little bit more.
Right. Okay.
And the state direct payments are supplements on top of that. So there's two things going on here, right? And both of those are being cut by the Senate bill in particular. There are other cuts in the House bill.
The Senate bill ends up being more egregious than
worse.
The House bill, which is sort of shocking.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And so what does this mean? There are hundreds of rural hospitals that are likely to have to close because of what happens in this bill. And what does it mean when a hospital closes? There are sick people in the hospital that have to be moved. And if you're talking about a rural hospital, it's probably have to be moved an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away. And that could be life-threatening in and of itself. The second part, if you have a rural town, and they lose their hospital, it's an anchor for the community. These are often the biggest employers in that community. You could obliterate an entire town by losing their rural hospital. And then 3, for patients, now the nearest hospital to where I live is 3 hours away. If you have a heart attack, if you have an emergency situation, you might not be able to get to the hospital in time. If you have a loved one that has to stay in a hospital somewhere else, you might have to pay to go to a hotel so you can see your loved one and help them through a time when they're sick. There are real burdens for patients. And then think about the burden on the remaining hospitals. So all of a sudden, they're getting patients from a larger area.
But wait a second.
Yeah.
If you cut Medicaid, doesn't that mean that those 11 million people they get healthy and never have to go to the hospital, right? Isn't that the theory?
Actually, what happens is those 11 million people no longer have coverage, but if they're sick, they're still going to go to the hospital. And we have a law in this country that says if you are in an emergency and you go to the emergency room, that
you have to get
treated. And that is called uncompensated care. So if that person can't afford it because, they
don't
poor
have
enough to be on
insurance?
Medicaid and they don't have health insurance, they're going to basically go and get treatment without getting paid. And that's a burden on the hospitals.
And
budget.
then it ends up being a cost that is picked up by private insurance and by essentially the public dole.
More by the hospitals, right? Because the hospitals are the one giving the treatment and not getting paid for it.
But they passed that.
Well, they asked for higher payments, but they might not be able to wrangle higher payments out of the insurance companies. And the other part of this is that more people are going to be coming in, whether they're insured or uninsured. They're going to be coming into that hospital. Hospitals are already understaffed. They already need more physicians. They already need more nurses. If you had a week wait time to see a doctor before, maybe it's 2 weeks now. And the healthcare system is very interdependent. If you have something go down in one side of it, the other side's going to be affected.
COVID. I mean, we saw how supplies had to be moved within the hospital system. If you have shut down a bunch of public hospitals, like Andrew Cuomo happened to have in the run up before COVID, there are hospitals that get overrun in terms of the burden and in cost and whatnot. And so this is going to have, and we should say that as little attention as it has gotten relative to the implications of this, look at the polling on this. Let's play this clip from Harry Enton on, is that his name, Harry Enton?
Yeah.
On CNN. He's never seen polling on legislation look worse, but it's
a soft intensity, though, right? Because people don't really know about it.
People don't know about it. Is clip number? We have this. 32? Yeah. Yep. And of course, there's other elements of this bill, and but this is like sort of where the biggest chunk of money in terms of cuts are coming from.
That's right.
Where is support for this mega bill?
I'm really surprised when I look at polling data. I look at it every day. But the amount of disapproval for this bill, holy cow, my goodness gracious. And you mentioned the KFF poll. We're talking about 29 points underwater on the net favorable rating. But that matches the Quinnipiac University poll from last week when it was 26 points underwater. Oh, my God, you need Greg Louganis to get that far underwater. And, I mean, we're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls, 26 points underwater and 29 points underwater. No good.
Extra, read all about it, mister.
I know.
It's 26 points underwater.
I mean,
did this guy fight in World War II?
I don't know. He's one of the doughboys. But, I mean, this is pretty stunning, but also does not seem to have, I mean, what are the prospects? Well, let's first talk about the bird bath stuff, because there's a lot of stuff in this bill that came from the House that goes into Senate. It's a reconciliation process, which means they only need 50 plus one to pass it. It is not subject to a filibuster. However, there's a set of rules named after Robert Byrd, a now long deceased former Democratic and former Dixiecratic
senator from West Virginia.
And tell people about those Byrd rules and the process in which it goes through what they call the Byrd bath.
So this is a budget reconciliation bill, right? So in order to qualify for that special status where it can be passed by 50 votes, everything has to have a primary budgetary purpose. And it's not just that it has to have a budgetary purpose, because if you cut $10 here, then that has a budgetary purpose. That has to be the primary reason why it's in the bill. It cannot be a policy that is sort of masquerading as a budget item. And because, once this rule was established, senators got more clever about trying to reach their policy goals through budgetary means. And so the Senate sort of arbiter, the parliamentarian, the famed parliamentarian, is the one who decides, nope, that actually you're trying to do policy there, and that doesn't qualify under the 50 vote standard. So we're going to kick that part out of it.
And the parties, the two different parties, basically go to the parliamentarian, file almost like what would
This
be
is
functionally
weird.
like briefs.
They should put these on television. The Democrats, in this case, the Democrats say, I raise a point of order about this part of the bill. And I say that this actually has a policy purpose and not a budgetary purpose. And then there's a debate between the Democratic staff and the Republican staff with the parliamentarian present. And then the parliamentarian eventually makes a ruling. And that ruling is that this either gets to stay in the bill or this has to go. And we actually got last night some early answers on some of this stuff. With three of the, every committee in the Senate has a different part of the bill. Three committees that have lesser parts of the bill, they got rulings. And the biggest thing is yet another kind of survival from a near-death experience for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So in the bill, the way that the CFPB is structured is that they get their money from the Federal Reserve. They don't get their money from the budget. So the question is, well, how do we ding the CFPB if it's not budgetary? They're not on the budget. So what they did was they said, okay, we're going to put a cap on how much money the Fed can give the CFPB. And that cap will be the 0% of the Fed's available resources. In other words, we're going to zero out the budget of the CFPB. Well, the Democrats challenged this and said, you're just trying to kill the CFPB. You're not trying to save money for the budget because it doesn't save money for the budget, not directly. And the parliamentarian agreed with the Democrats, and they kicked that part out of the bill. So the CFPB will still get its current complement. There is actually a cap on CFPB resources, and it's like 8% of what the Fed has. I forget the exact number. It's like $600 billion or something. Or, I'm sorry, $600 million. But anyway, so that's out of the bill. And to be clear, Congress can pass whatever it wants to. It's just about having the special rules
that allow you to avoid the filibuster.
That's right.
And there are a couple. There are tens of these provisions, at least, within the.
So this, CFPB is an example. There was another
artificial intelligence ban. There's a whole array of.
There's another one that got thrown out last night, which was the Republicans tried to repeal the CAFE standards for cars, which is an emissions standard, tailpipe emissions for cars, and say, cars have to have an average miles per gallon of 35 by X year. They tried to repeal that and say that would save money. And the parliamentarian said, no, you're trying to create policy, and that we're throwing.
Side note, the parliamentarian was sidestepped essentially when they essentially used the Congressional Review Act in a sort of a misappropriated way. But let's not confuse
this is
things.
a key point, right? Because this is the first time things have been kicked out of the bill. And John Thune, who's the Senate Majority Leader, has said, we're going to abide by the parliamentarian. However, as you just said, they sidestepped the parliamentarian in one previous
3 weeks
case,
ago.
just a few weeks ago.
On
and
a
they
separate bill.
They also did it for this bill. When they were doing the budget resolution, and now we're going to get into real wonky
This is
stuff.
getting into very wonky stuff, but this is very important because we're talking about the baseline, right? Of how we approach the tax cuts that are set to expire.
Right.
And before we get to that, let's explain this other dynamic that exists with the Byrd rule, which is it needs to be deficit neutral 10 years out from the bill. Right.
Basically, it cannot create deficits after the 10-year budget window. Everything has to pencil out after that first 10 years. You can have it spend money or be a deficit in those first 10 years, but after that, it has to be neutral.
Which is why very often what we get is tax cuts that will expire in 10 years.
Which is what happened in the Trump tax cuts of 2017. The Trump tax cuts of 2017 actually expire at the end of this year.
Yep.
And that was to make it look cheaper and also to pencil out the budget neutrality outside the budget window.
And but when we talk about baseline,
right,
even though these tax cuts must expire,
right, so there's
by
a current,
virtue of their very existence, they could not exist if they weren't to expire at the end of this year. However, there's some...
So the way it goes is there are two baselines you could use. There's a current law baseline and the current policy baseline. The current law baseline is, what does the law say? And the law says that these tax cuts expire in 2025, and therefore, if you extend them, it will cost the amount of the tax cuts in 2026 and 27 and 28 and 29 and so on. If you use the current policy baseline, the current policy is these tax cuts are in place. So if they just stay in place, that doesn't cost any money because it's just the same budget baseline as we have this year. And this is a really key point because of the rules of not just the rules of budget reconciliation, but also what it looks like to the public. Does it look like these things cost $3 trillion, or does it look like it's the difference between that and the bill looking like it saves money over the next 10 years, right? So the Senate is really, really interested in doing a current policy baseline.
The Republican Senate.
The Republican Senate. And the Democrats have said, well, that violates any standard because you could just pass a reconciliation bill saying Medicare for all, but we're only doing it for 1 year. And then the next year pass a reconciliation bill that says Medicare for all permanently, and that doesn't cost any money because it's current policy.
Right.
So is that really what you want to go for, Republicans? When Senate Republicans came up against this on the budget resolution, which kind of sets the terms for the reconciliation bill, they said, well, we don't need to ask the parliamentarian about that. And they just ignored the parliamentarian, didn't even ask her.
And they left it up to Lindsey Graham, who is the...
left it up to the budget chair, who is Lindsey Graham. And he said, yeah, sure, we'll do current policy baseline. Now we're in a position with the bill itself where Democrats are going to challenge that. And they're going to have the same debate in front of the parliamentarian this time. And I think some of these other things like CFPB or CAFE rules, Senate Republicans will probably not pick a fight over that. But if the parliamentarian says that the current policy baseline is out,
that's the biggest fight.
That's the biggest fight. And there may be a situation where they ignore the ruling of the chair, which they have the ability to do. And then
But Thune promised they wouldn't do it.
Thune promised, but we're going to see the rubber hit the road once that gets
the big one. I mean, because like the AI regulations that could drop out. We already have people in the House. We already have a couple people in the House who already say, "I regret voting for the bill with that."
Big tech is lobbying furiously for that because it would ban all state regulations of artificial intelligence for the next 10 years, and that includes a whole host of products because AI is in
everything now, supposedly.
Not only that, but it's defined very broadly in the bill. So it could be, Real Page uses an algorithm to make its recommendations on how landlords can jack up rents. Yep. That could be considered AI, and so states and cities cannot do regulations on Real Page. It has a huge set of implications.
And so those smaller things, they may drop out. We're gonna start seeing this, and this stuff is so Byzantine that, outside of like a couple of small podcasts, frankly, people are not aware of this. The big one being though that what is the baseline? What are we going to determine the cuts? And the argument that I saw Stephen Miller make, I think it was on. Was it on Bannon? No, it was on with Kudlow, if you could believe it. There's no reason to expect that taxes are going to be any different tomorrow than they were today. Right. Which, of course, is like, what are you talking about? This entire bill, this tax regime was different than it was the day before you passed it.
If you extend this out, you just extend this logic out. There was a billboard on Fox News that said that this bill saved $8 trillion. And the way they got that is they said current policy baseline, that's $0. But also look at all the economic growth that this is going to spur if you extend the tax cut.
Well, that's the Laffer
which
curve.
costs $0.
Right.
They said, oh, that's $3 trillion. That's going to so that saves the government or adds revenue of $3 trillion to the government. And then they said, but also look at all the money we're collecting from tariffs, which isn't in the bill at all. But they said that's another $3 trillion. And so they put this thing together, and it literally said that this bill saves $8 trillion.
I don't understand why they even bother to why not just put out a number and just, instead of like trying to have to reverse engineer where you're getting these figures for. I mean, they're literally just numbers floating in the air, and they just shove them in there, and they're meaningless. It feels like we don't have a media, broadly speaking, that has the ability to push back on these sort of completely fake narratives that exist. All right, let's turn to one other thing that I know you've been following, the Genius Act. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is, like you say, within 2 weeks, it feels like we may both unlearn the lessons of the Iraq War and of the financial crisis. Right. This does feel like what it would feel like watching essentially the Clinton administration sign off on the repeal of Glass-Steagall, but almost,
I think closer.
Worse.
Yeah.
It almost feels worse because it feels like this crypto stuff is going to spread in such a way that it will be almost impossible to get a handle on it. And it's just going to run like this feels like it could be super cataclysmic, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, don't know when, but.
Well, look, we've been here before. We've seen this happen before. At the end of the 90s, as you say, Clinton not only signed the repeal of Glass-Steagall, but the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, which basically says you can't have any regulations on derivatives. And within about 7-8 years, we had a financial crisis that was based on people using a lot of derivatives to make bets on the housing market. In 2017-18, the only real bipartisan bill that passed in the first Trump term was a deregulation, basically a repeal of certain parts of the Dodd-Frank Act, particularly for large community banks or large regional banks. Within 5 years, 6 years, you had Silicon Valley Bank, which was a large regional bank, completely blow up. And if we didn't have crypto isolated from the regular financial system, that probably would have been worse. But that was a mini crisis that happened. And several large regional banks went under because of that. Now you have this stablecoin bill. The Genius Act puts a regime together, a pretty light touch regulatory regime for stablecoins. It will allow, I know you've had people on the show talking about this, but it will allow, for companies. We've now seen Walmart and Amazon say that they might put their own stablecoin together. Walmart bucks that you will use to have to pay for items at Walmart or items at Amazon. We could see that out of Meta for Facebook. You want to use Facebook Marketplace, you got to use a Meta stablecoin. You want to use X as a financial tool, you might have an X dollar that is a stablecoin. We're now seeing private currencies that are being set up across the economy. We're going to see that as a result of this bill when it passes, because, by the way, the House hasn't passed it yet. There's still more to be done. The House probably will pass it, but they might also bundle their own ideas with it. And they want to do a market structure bill, which would basically strip the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, of regulation of a lot of digital coins and give it to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is smaller and also friendlier to crypto.
Right.
So, there's still work to be done. It remains to be seen. But the Senate passed the Genius Act this week with, I believe, 18 Democrats that were in support, along with pretty much every Republican.
And that, of course, is because, almost explicitly because of the enormous crypto money. But it feels like, broadly speaking, what it feels like we have now is essentially like the problem we had with shadow banking, except for it's really just creating a whole new class of banks but without any of the capital requirements, essentially, of actual banks. And I guess presumably allowing for all sorts of other derivatives and financial products that would come out of it on the back end and could theoretically be traded. Like you could have secondary, tertiary markets trading on the Walmart dollar or whatever they call it. You know, the
First of all, I'm so excited to have to go to every different place of business that I buy things at with a different kind of money.
Well,
that's
it's sort of
really
like this.
exciting.
It's like, you know, it is as if, you know, I remember in college going to Jamaica for spring break.
Right.
There were riots in Kingston at that time, so it was very, very inexpensive. But the hotel we stayed at, you couldn't buy anything with cash. It all had to be these like plastic beads. And you would buy all these plastic beads, you wear it around your neck, and then you would just pull it off to buy like, you know, rum punch.
And then it's like it's a hop, skip, and a jump to workers at Walmart being paid in these.
Of course. And then, but
now
is,
it's like
I
company
couldn't
script.
take that anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the real problem is that these companies are so massive and they have their own essentially economies. It could be backed by nothing and could fall apart at any point because they could just
What we've seen with the stablecoins that exist now is that there was one point a couple of years ago where every single one of the major stablecoins was under investigation by the federal government for precisely that reason, not having enough disclosure of what they were actually backed by. And, you know, a lot of those investigations have been canceled out by the Trump administration.
Right.
Whose private organization has its own stablecoin, USD1, that's part of World Liberty Financial, which is part of the Trump organization. And yet this level of corruption that we're seeing with Trump's forays into crypto did not move almost a single Democrat to head off this bill. And then you had, I think maybe the funniest part of this, Adam Schiff, the senator from California, saying, I am introducing a bill to block Donald Trump from introducing a stablecoin. And he did it after voting to pass the Genius Act. He did not make it a condition of his vote.
I'm really shocked to hear that. So, I mean, what will happen to vanilla banks at that point? Like, what's the point of them? It seems to me they'll just move their operations into like, the bank will exist over here as this sort of some type of like side project. And their main business would be to be these sort of like unfettered by regulation banks.
One of the amazing things in my view is how community banks did exceedingly little to try to fight back against this bill. There were some community bankers in a couple states, Texas, Illinois, that actually opposed the bill and worked, you know, to lobby Congress against it. But the national group, the Independent Community Bankers Association, did nothing on this.
Do you think they just weren't aware of the implications?
No, I think they were fully aware of the implications, but they took a dive. And, you know, often the national ICBA is aligned with the big banks, and the big banks don't have a problem with this because they can, you know, they can issue their own stablecoins.
Exactly.
They can use.
They're big enough that they're going to just do a rival play.
They can profit off of trading from this. The independent banks are a really endangered species right now, the community banks, because of, you know, what might happen if this bill passes.
Crazy.
What's going on before I go? What's your call? What's your gut feel here on New York City mayor's race?
I am going to check the weather and tell you. I just saw some. I guess it was maybe over the past day or two. The early voting numbers look great from Ron Donnie.
And that's because of where they're coming from?
Because where they're coming from. They're coming from Brooklyn and Manhattan. His weakest boroughs are like the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And this is off the top of my head, but in Brooklyn, it's like 132% more.
Yeah.
All the businesses have Zoran posters.
It is It's crazy. In Manhattan, also 132% more, something like that.
That could just be pulling forward votes. There's a finite amount.
That is correct, which is why I just checked the weather.
Right.
On Monday, it's going to be in the high 90s. On Tuesday, it's going to be 100 degrees at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And my sense is that if we look at enthusiasm,
banking those votes is important.
Banking those votes are important, particularly for Cuomo.
Right.
Because I do not
You have an older electorate that might not come out in 100-degree weather.
And I just think that the support for Cuomo is not as intense. It may be larger,
but it may not be
but
as
it's
deep.
not as deep. Yeah. And when you have an obstacle to voting, this is the sort of the classic thing, right?
That's interesting. I mean, seeing that Marist poll that came out that had a kind of a 10-point race, very much in line with Cuomo's internal polling, it seems to me that there is a larger electorate for Cuomo at the moment.
I think,
although that gap is shrinking.
I think that gap is shrinking, but I also think that, look, I don't know how many of these voting places, when there's a line, if it's not out the door, and I don't know how. In 100-degree weather. In 100-degree weather,
right?
I've met one Cuomo canvasser. Mm-hmm. This is a completely anecdotal story. He handed me the thing. I walked like a half a block and I'm like, I wonder. And I went back and I'm like, what is it you like about Cuomo? And the guy was just like,
I like getting paid.
I
like the check that he gives me every week.
And then so I went back up to where I was going and then walked back. He was gone already.
One thing that's interesting is I just got to the area just yesterday, but the ad war that is happening for and it's all anti-Mamdani. It's not pro-Cuomo. Is pretty staggering. In fact, Zoran today went to the city board of elections and said, you have to raise the cap because the super PAC money that Cuomo's getting is something like $24 million. So you have to allow me to spend more money above the cap because of all of these super PAC resources that are coming in.
Yeah, I wonder in a primary, in 95-degree weather, how much cable television ads impact the election. I mean, I don't.
What about that globalize the Intifada controversy?
I just don't think that's going to be as. I think that was already locked in.
You mean the people who are going to vote against Mamdani for that reason already were going to vote
we're already going to vote against them. And if anything, so I think the Lander cross endorsement gives a permission structure for people who might have been on the fence. I mean, I think it's really going to come down to...
You going live on Tuesday?
Well, we go live every day.
On election night.
Oh, that's a good idea. I may...
I have your ideas. I'm the one coming up with these things for you.
I mean, it's I play softball on Tuesday nights, but maybe
I don't want to block your softball.
But maybe I will do that live from my softball game.
Live from the dugout.
Live from the dugout.
Exactly.
Checking Twitter for the.
But I think it's really just a question of who turns out, and I think that's a much harder, as good as these polls are.
Yeah.
And I think, like in the Marist, I think it's a very reputable pollster. Mm-hmm. I think it's very, very difficult to assess who's going to come out.
Right.
You look at the last primary, 5 people came out to vote for that in the
Adams Garcia race.
Yes.
This is going to have much higher turnout than that. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying.
And people are more engaged.
I think
it's
going to be. I think it's conceivable. It could be 50% higher, maybe more.
Right.
And there's also a lot more sophistication about ranked choice voting that did not exist that time.
Right.
And so I think it's just
right, because that was the first one. So you think the escalation in terms of knowledge and engagement from one to the first race to the second race is pretty exponential.
Yes. And so this is. And it's also interesting, Matt's putting this up here. Let's just go through this. Bill de Blasio, who I think never, ever, ever got enough credit for, nor did he do himself any favors until he seemed like never to talk about it.
Right.
But this, his universal pre-K, which he fought tooth and nail with Cuomo over.
Yeah.
I mean, Cuomo had basically tried to put a poison pill in there that would kill it at one point, but it was so amazingly popular.
Right.
And Cuomo got significantly weaker after just happenstance after this fight with Bill de Blasio. The pre-K and 3K.
3K, you mean 3-year-olds going?
Yes.
That's what that means?
It means the last 2 years prior to kindergarten.
Right.
Are universal, are paid.
Right.
And, by the city, essentially. And it is huge. It is so massive. And I think were it not for COVID, we would see huge gains in education achievement. So,
right.
I don't know. That's we'll see. Andrew Cuomo fought tooth and nail against that. David Dayen, I know you got to get to lunch. Thank you so much for
thanks a
coming
lot.
by.
Good to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you on the program.
All right. Thank you.
Folks, we will put a link to the American Prospect, also to the Weekly Roundup, and to it's not Big Money.
Organized Money.
Organized Money, the podcast that is focused on issues of power and money concentration in our society.
Got a great one this week you'll like on Hollywood.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is this about the streaming platforms?
Yes, about streaming. It's with Richard Rushfield from The Ankler. It's terrific.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I mean, Zasloff and Malone have just raked in the money. They have destroyed the entertainment business, although I hear rumors it's coming back a little bit over the past month. But
well, now they created a separate company for the cable networks.
Yes,
which is kind of like
all this
when you create a bad bank.
It is like a leveraged buyout.
Toxic assets in the bad bank.
Toys R Us,
so that it will go away.
Yes, it's Toys R Us and Joann's Fabric.
Right.
Honestly. Yeah. And of course, the reason why the business is in the crapper is because they spent billions of dollars on this streaming stuff and
without a business model.
Without a single clue as to what they were doing. It is literally my experience on Peacock was indicative of this. A completely sequestered product that is like cable, all the deficits of cable, but none of the benefits of streaming or the internet or whatever. It's fascinating. I once had somebody on Air America say to me, the last CEO who drove the thing, it was like 3 feet under. He drove it to like 9 feet under. And I was telling him, like, you've really managed to completely screw up this company in an incredibly impressive way. And he told me, maybe this was earlier in his tenure, he said, when I was a program director at some Washington, I can't remember a station, it was a sports thing. We had Jim Stevenson, I'm making up the name, I can't remember, who was a columnist with the Washington Post. Come on. And I would tell him, the rule is you're not allowed to talk about anything you've written about. And you're not allowed to write about anything you're talking about. And he goes, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a centrist radio station, but the most progressive.
We have to start with the obvious one.
We're gonna, the most progressive website. We're gonna take on Huffington Post. And I was like, this is impressive because you are probably the first guy in 30 years who is going to try and develop a completely horizontal business model. What you really should do is open up a shoe store and refuse to advertise on either the website or the radio station. And he just looked at me like, ooh, well, like it was the dumbest thing I had ever heard by a guy who had that kind of watch and shoes.
It's cool that that's the type of person that runs the world.
Honestly, I've said this many times before. I mean, the guy actually had donated to Mitt Romney. We looked up his only, but that wasn't the issue. But for people to assume like, oh my God, there must be some type of right-wing plant that is purposefully sabotaging Air America. No, it's just that you can't conceive of the level of incompetence that exists with a guy like that. I mean, very good at selling people who have no clue but a lot of money on what to do. So much of the world operates in that way, where somebody's got a ton of money and they don't know, they have no touchstone as to what they want to do. But the first guy who walks in wearing, good shoes and a watch and drives up in a nice car, they're like, this guy must know what he's talking about. And that's how we get such a effed up world. It's all right there. Last name Zier. Anyways, couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. Could not help myself. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member of the Majority Report by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, but you also get the fun half. You can IM us. And occasionally we have bonuses. We were just talking the other day, Matt and I, like, we gotta dig up these old Majority Report shows. Brian, we were saying that we got a project for our summer intern, and make these. Now, I know I've been saying this for like 8 years, but this time I mean it. When Dayen came in, I said, our project this summer is to clean up the office. And Dayen was like, that was your project last summer and the summer before that. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Next week, big week. Big week next week. Obviously, the New York City mayoral race. I guess we'll find out if we're going to be involved in a massive Middle Eastern war. That may happen. I'm waiting for July 4th so we can do an Independence Day. I'm going to do an Independence Day speech when we bomb Iran.
Gotta hope Seymour Hersh is wrong about his sources saying it's going to happen this weekend.
This weekend?
He says or soon this weekend, probably tonight or tomorrow, so the markets can open on Monday, is what Hersh is saying. But, he has pretty deep sources in military-industrial complex, and he can be wrong sometimes. So,
I mean,
hopefully.
His track record as of late has not been stellar.
Yeah.
But I think, look, the argument that they are taking this time to do what they can to position U.S. military, naval, Air Force in a way to respond to Iran's response makes sense to me. And the idea that, you would say 2 weeks when really all you need is 4 days to do this also makes sense to me. But I want to remind people, like, apparently they're not even, like, Pete Hegseth is not even involved in the conversations. They have bypassed Pete Hegseth, who, just in case you forgot, was the Secretary of Defense. We'll talk more about this in the so-called fun half. But you have a military that has stripped out. Well, we'll talk about it in the, because I want to have time to go into this, but it seems to me that it's hard to imagine a less opportune time, not that there should ever be an opportune time, to engage in the potential of an ever-increasing and spiraling regional conflict based upon how little experience it appears the top military brass has right now. and how you have a defense secretary who's sort of out of the loop. Pete, I have you here just to say yes to...
Pete, you're here so we can shoot protesters' kneecaps, okay? We don't need anything more from you.
Pete, the best thing about you is that you don't know how to pronounce posse comitatus.
Go have a drink.
And so, go have a drink. You sit at the bar, and if we need you, we'll call you. We know where you'll be.
Yeah, we know. We'll call the bartender.
Exactly. All right, Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning will have a show probably talking about Iran. And also a preview of Monday's show, but we talked to Adam Gaffney about Medicaid cuts and the impact of that, and also did a little bit of, talk about Blinken looking the other way about another bout of genocidal violence in Tigray between Ethiopia and Eritrea. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
Next week, we're going to have guests on the Scrimeti decision. I think that'll be Wednesday. We have Chase Strangio, who argued the case. I think we will have Leah Littman on some of the other Supreme Court cases that we've discussed. We're going to have Gaffney on to talk about more about the implications on medicine, essentially, in this country as in the wake of the bill. We've got a bunch of other stuff next week. It's going to be a packed week, and then, who knows? Who knows what could happen, frankly. And, of course, the mayor's race on Tuesday. Tuesday night, I probably will do some, live updates from my softball game. It's quite a crew there. I wonder who they're. There's going to be a wide array of people voting. The voting habits at my softball game. All right, see you in the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, and I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now, and I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false. No, I'm sorry. Women's...
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is this?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single frickin' day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm going to go throw up.
Who libertarians?
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
654 $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes with satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back, Sam Seder. On the Majority Report, fun half, Emma Vigeland off on her honeymoon. We should really, in honor of Emma, have a pool as to how long it's going to be until one of us receives a text of a political tweet that she needs us to look at. Yeah. I'm going to say...
Probably before the end of the show.
But yeah, no, nope, don't have one right now. But I don't know. Do we know when she's getting on the plane?
I don't know, and I don't know it'd be worth talking about on air.
No, yeah, we don't need to get the specific with that. But I'm saying, is it certainly by Monday?
Yeah. Her data, her international data is going to be crazy.
Oh my God!
expensive.
Exactly. Exactly.
Might need a new SIM card over there.
Exactly. But yes, I imagine that it's going to be very difficult a week or two for her. But she will be back in a couple of weeks. Unless Mom Donnie wins, in which case I imagine she'll fly home. Yeah. It's going to be one of those things where she tells her husband, I just need to go get, I'm going to go get some fresh bread. And she's at like some hotel bar watching the news or something like that. Or, all right, let's get into this. We are very clearly on the verge of an attack on Iran. Now, whether it actually happens or not, we can't know at this point. But it certainly feels that way. And the reporting coming out of the Washington Post, New York Times, is that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been more or less sidelined. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, sidelined.
Who's in the game then?
Well, apparently he's talking to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's talking to Stephen Miller. He's talking to his chief of staff. He's got Marco Rubio, who's also the National Security Council head or acting and Secretary of State. So there's a wide array of neocons, essentially, and just bloodthirsty people who are, which is not to say that Hegseth isn't. It just means that Hegseth is that dumb and that useless. But here is Hegseth, and this is a thing, like, look, over the many, many years that I have been following this stuff, and particularly in the run-up to the Iraq War and in the wake of 9/11, Democrats always generally genuflect to Republicans on national security. That has changed in part because we have a crop of Democratic lawmakers who are vets, came out of Iraq, Afghanistan, and run for office. And yet, there is definitely a feeling that, and certainly in terms of like progressives, there is just not much energy spent. And I'm guilty of this too, or I don't know if guilty is the right word, but on things like military policy beyond our desire to have a significantly reduced defense budget. In the same way that Republicans don't really spend too much time thinking about education, other than we want to get rid of it. They don't. You're not hearing, big education policies coming out of the Republican Party since essentially No Child Left Behind, which was just largely implemented as a way of putting corporate metrics on teaching, and it's since been completely rejected. But it's important to, and so there's a vacuum of Democrats and progressives who are making the argument of like, you're about to take us to war with, well, Pete Hegseth tells us right now, we don't know how many new leaders of our military. We have a guy who was literally 6 months ago barely able to do weekend Fox and Friends and show up sober to do his hits on Fox News. And now you're about to get us into a potential quagmire. Here is Pete Hegseth, who can't even explain why he fired or Trump fired. We don't even know how many generals. Go ahead.
A success of the Houthi operation. About how much money did it cost? How much money did you spend on missiles shooting at the Houthis?
Well, you'd have to compare that with what it cost.
I'm just asking how much did it cost?
Divert our shipping lanes around.
I'm told it's several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How
Pause
many
it for one
U.S. flagged
second.
commercial?
Can one of you guys Google what percentage of U.S. ships went through those shipping lanes that the Houthis were firing on? Something like, I think it's like 4% of U.S. ships traveled through those straits. Some infinitesimally small amount of our trade goes through there, but nevertheless, continue.
I'm told it's several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How many U.S. flagged commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since your so-called successful operation?
Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration,
the answer is zero.
Military vessels transit.
No. I didn't ask about military vessels. I
which
asked
would
about
be the
commercial
precursor
vessels.
for
How many commercial vessels?
transit.
It's been several weeks. How many commercial vessels, U.S. flagged, have transited the Red Sea?
Would you, Mr. Congressman, put civilian ships?
The questions are not to me,
military
Mr. Secretary.
ships?
They're to you.
We have responsibly put military.
The answer is zero.
First.
I reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number, but
you don't know the number. It's 8. Can you?
Can't count that high.
Well, what secret decoder ring? And listen, I'm not a huge fan of Seth Moulton. I want to make that clear. But these are important questions to be asked. What secret inside information that Seth Moulton has that Pete Hegseth doesn't in terms of who Pete Hegseth fired?
Look, when you're going up against Pete Hegseth, it's not fair when you can count to 8.
Go ahead.
Explain why any of them were fired? Just explain why was...
They all serve at the pleasure of the president, and I think...
No, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just asking you why.
That we need.
You probably learned at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we want better representation in each and every of those.
You can't explain why you fired any of them?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and
there you go. So he didn't know how many admirals and generals he fired, and he doesn't know why he fired them.
Representation.
Now, look, it's quite possible that there's always you can fire 8 of the top admirals and generals, and there's someone right below them who's like, I got this. No problem. Maybe you don't need that much experience in these things. I don't know. It seems like you'd make a bigger deal of it.
I'm clicking on some of the pictures of the fire generals, and the first one was a black guy. So
What? Oh no, it is all 100% black people or women or brown people.
Oh yeah, Lisa Franchetti, so black guy and a woman. So I think we might know the answer of why.
They're all woke.
Because representation.
They're woke. We know it. It's because they're woke. With all that wokeism out of the military now, it should be no problem.
CQ Brown, and he's a black guy?
What? Who did this?
We need better representation here.
So basically, it comes down to, Donald Trump is going to make this determination with his anti-woke crew. Here is Katie Britt. Have they let her out? Is she doing this interview with Jake Tapper from her kitchen? Oh, they didn't make her stay in the kitchen for this? Is this the first time she's been out since this is the first time I've seen her actually do national television since her attempt to do
response.
Yep. Here she is explaining why she has no problems with any of this.
Not sure how well you could hear that, but he basically said, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard said. I think the Iranians are
pause
very
it. We
close
should
to
just say it's not just Tulsi Gabbard. She's repeating what I think it's 18 intelligence agencies said to the extent that they had awareness of it or they've done any work on this, that the Iranians have not had a program to develop a nuclear weapon since 2003. I repeat, not since 2023, but since 2003. And Trump, when asked about this, says, I don't care what she says.
She's the one that the entire party voted to make the director of national intelligence, but who cares?
I'm sorry, is her name Tulsi Gabbard or is it Miriam Adelson?
Not sure how well you could hear that, but he basically said, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard said. I think the Iranians are very close to having a nuclear weapons program. So which is it?
Look, I trust President Trump. He is our commander-in-chief. He is the one that will make this decision. He both created and leads the America First policy, the America First movement. He understands about keeping us safe both here and abroad. I trust his instincts and certainly stand with the president.
So you think the intelligence community assessment that Tulsi Gabbard shared, Director of National Intelligence Gabbard shared, was inaccurate?
Well, Jake,
how do you reconcile it?
What I think is, under no circumstances should Iran be enriching uranium. I mean, we know that they are an untrustworthy adversary, if I may. And so making sure that they cannot continue to do that we have complete dismantlement of that program has to be the goal. We cannot walk away from this and leave them with the ability to achieve and get a nuclear weapon. That's not only bad for Israel, it is bad for America, and it is bad for the globe.
And the response to that is they're not doing anything of what you just said they're doing. She did good, though. She did good.
That's what we like to see.
I think somebody's going to get some extra time outside the kitchen.
Thank you for trusting me.
She's going to be able to get outside the kitchen. America first. First.
I did create it. I am the creator of America First.
And she's the senator from Stepford. Is that correct?
A whole senator talking like that. And the Iraq.
I trust Trump. Meanwhile, the big story, of course, on the right is that Tucker Carlson questioned Ted Cruz on a bunch of different things. You guys play more of that interview yesterday?
Yeah.
Feels like Ted Cruz doesn't read the Bible carefully.
He both determines the policy of our entire nation of 300 million people based on it, and also can't really cite it. So it's cool.
It's a vibes. It's a Bible more than a
Bible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in there. Support Netanyahu.
Listen, come on. We know the gist of it.
I'm trying to be on the right side of God over here. I'm not actually trying to read the thing.
We know the gist of it. God said attack Iran. And so we do. I don't need to know how many people. Is it
Revelations where they say Iran can't get a nuke, I think?
5 million, 90 million. Here's Donald Trump responding to the argument between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. And, of course, Trump claims that, he heard, is that what it is? He heard from Tucker Carlson, and I got my apology.
Have you seen the Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz interview? It seems like this issue on whether or not the United States should strike is kind of dividing a lot of your supporters.
No, my supporters are for me. My supporters are America first. They make America great again. My supporters don't want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. Tucker's a nice guy. He called and apologized the other day because he thought he said things that were a little bit too strong, and I appreciated that. And Ted Cruz is a nice guy. I mean, he's been with me for a long time. I'd say once the race was over, he's been with me.
He's been with me since I attacked his wife for not being as hot as mine. Okay.
Yes, no, he calls me on a regular basis and just reminds me on how much of a dog his wife is. He just calls up and says, President Trump, I just want you to know, my wife, still unattractive.
Mr. President, your wife is about 2 points higher than mine.
Oh,
let's work together for Israel, please.
Sometimes he just says like 5 points. He's
Ted,
like,
don't go overboard.
He says Melania's 11 and his wife is like a 4.
I'm like, okay.
And I appreciated that. And Ted Cruz is a nice guy. I mean, he's been with me for a long time. I'd say once the race was over, he's been with me ever since, right? But very simple. If they think that it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, then they should oppose me. But nobody thinks it's okay.
Have you seen the
I mean, that to me sounds like a guy who thinks he's going to war. But keep him up there for a moment because there was a report recently that Botox is not healthy for you. Something's going on. Donald Trump looks markedly different than he did literally like 2 weeks ago.
Do you remember Rip Taylor?
Rip Taylor, the
Glitter throwing old. That's what he looks
oh yeah. Oh, that guy?
Yeah. He was on Jackass.
Yes. There's something going on with him. And he also just seems incredibly tired. And I would imagine, like, I guess I'm going to have to work more if we're going to get to do a whole war thing.
He's going to look so decrepit by the end of this term.
Oh,
like,
my God.
It's just a repeat of Biden. Like, and you compare him to 2016, he had so much energy. And he is an old man now.
Yeah. 2026. I think in the run up to 2026, I think in a year from now, maybe if I just keep trying to play more golf, it'll turn the clock back a little bit. The golf thing is like very reminiscent of Biden's bicycling. Last vestige.
Oh, yeah, and he started falling over on the bike. It's like, oh.
It's going to be fascinating when Trump falls out of a golf cart. That's going to be like...
he's already doing the stumble up the stairs to the plane.
Is there more to this? No, I already did it. We're good. No, we're good. I already plugged that thing in and out. Ooh, medium literacy says that Ted Cruz impersonation is good, Matt. Teacher Dan, Trump's face might be assisted with some of that invisible tape strip stuff that they stick up eyebrows and pull back cheek skins with. Folks, the number 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. Let's play number 6. I just found this so sort of shocking. You'll recall, I can't remember which hospital it was. The Al-Shifa hospital, was that the first one that they attacked? and I can't remember when this was, a year ago? More? When Israel first hit the first hospital that they bombed in Gaza, there was so much attempt by the Israelis and its apologists in this country to argue that there was a underground bunker. There were animated videos that were coming out. There were, testimonies. Now, the fact is, the bunkers were definitely there because they were built by the Israelis when they last occupied Gaza underneath that hospital. There's no doubt. There's tunnels throughout Gaza. They sent people down there. These underground bunkers were not nearly as impressive, these huge command centers that they said. But there was talk like, well, we didn't actually bomb a hospital. It was actually Hamas that accidentally bombed the hospital. And then at one point, it just became so obvious that Israel was on a genocidal campaign to ethnically cleanse Gaza. After they blew up all the universities, they started blowing up churches and mosques. And they just started to willy-nilly shell hospitals. That the idea of even them putting out some type of like alibi became like, it wasn't even worth it for them because no one believed it. They didn't believe it. They knew people didn't believe it. They just had, and it was quite clear, no one was going to stop them from bombing hospitals or bombing anything for that matter in Gaza. They never even did the lip service to it anymore. And so I mean, I imagine there are some people who respond to this and think it's outrageous. But I am just sort of shocked at the audacity that this is going to create sympathy, or that there's like play this.
And move. Right next to it is a children's ward, a baby's ward, infants. They target it. They can give this nonsense.
This is Netanyahu complaining that the Iranians, after they were bombed, and listen, just because you kill scientists, incidentally, scientists are civilian, but just even if you kill scientists, it doesn't say you don't get away with like, we don't really pay attention to the other 25 people who he killed, who lived in that building, and his family. This hospital is near a military base. The military base was also hit. But here is Netanyahu trying to drum up outrage about a strike on a hospital.
Baby's ward, infants. They target it. They can give this nonsense that they're targeting military sites. What military sites? I know all the military sites in Israel. There isn't a military site here for miles and miles around. They're targeting civilians because they're a criminal regime. They're the arch terrorists of the world. They want to have nuclear terrorism, which will put the entire world under nuclear blackmail, and they would use these weapons. That's what the Ayatollah Khamenei says that he would do. He would use these weapons to wipe Israel off the map. Well, he's not going to. We're not going to let him. And we're in the process of achieving a tremendous victory. And our victory is aimed at those two goals. People ask me, are we targeting the downfall of the regime? That may be a result, but it's up to the Iranian people to rise for their freedom. Freedom is never cheap. It's never free. Freedom requires these subjugated people to rise up, and it's up to them.
It's almost like a parody. Freedom requires oppressed people to rise up. Like, you could take everything he's saying And it could be instructions to Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza. The talk of bombing hospitals and like how completely out of control that regime must be. And the idea that they're threatening nuclear weapons. I mean, they're talking about using tactical nukes on Iran. Like all of this, it's literally like, it's just mind blowing. I mean, hypocrisy, things like this. It's almost as if it's written by a playwright or a screenwriter. I'm going to have the Netanyahu character say these things. And it's going to be my way of like, these are things that could be said by other people about it. It's that almost literary and absurd. Go ahead.
Create conditions that will help them do it. Our goal is twofold. Nuclear, ballistic missile, we're going to remove that. We are in the process of completing removing this threat.
Okay. We don't need the part that is, we just needed the part that was for American consumption.
Where he repeats all the bromides that sort of game our system and get, bipartisan support in Congress.
Exactly. I mean, it's just shocking. UNICEF is reporting right now that there is a, they call it a man-made drought. I mean, we know who's creating that drought. It's not like the Gazans, the Palestinians in Gaza are, they're using too much water for their crops right now. Only 40% of drinking water production facilities in Gaza are operational, according to UNICEF. There's a 50% rise in malnutrition cases among children aged 6 months to 5 years. Yesterday, at least 25 people were killed by Israeli fire while seeking aid. That's according to local health authorities. I mean, it's just insane. Absolutely insane. To hear him talk that way, it's just, it's crazy. I just can't imagine that there's anybody out there who is responding to this stuff. But there is. Ooh, Adrian Adams just released a presser saying don't rank Cuomo and rank the WFP slate. A little late.
Fascinating. Did you see what was going on last night with that?
Well, they were supposed to come out with that.
They had it prepared and there was dissension in her camp and it didn't come out, but now it's out, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know what's behind that.
She also had tweeted that we don't just abolish any agency we don't agree with. We need to reform ICE, and then deleted that tweet saying that's not what our campaign wanted to say. So it seems like there's a little bit of a split personality.
There's something going on there. There's something going on there.
But thank you for the endorsement.
Calling from a 917 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Simon. I'm calling from Saugerties, New York. How you doing?
Simon from Saugerties. What's on your mind, Simon?
So there's this thing that's been bothering me actually for a couple of years now. That's like a strategic, maybe oversight, and it's bothering me recently in regards to this like Rockland County thing about the lawsuit about the election and there was all this stuff about the 7 swing states all going for Kamala and none of them being at a point where it would trigger a recount. I saw like just in my internet sweeps the other day like a small article talking about how the election actually could have been rigged via this company Pro V&V, which is like one of 2 federally accredited testing labs, which approved sweeping last-minute updates to the ES and S voting machines in the months leading up to the 2024 election without independent testing, public disclosure, or full certification review. They did this by making a bunch of changes that were apparently classified as trivial changes, so they didn't have to be reviewed. And these were, I think these were to like a component that hooks up to like virtually all of the vote counting machines in every county in the U.S. So long story short, I could try to read this to you or whatever, but I don't want to waste too much time here. That company was bought by a partner company to Palantir. So
Yeah.
like it, and you can pretty much trace it right back to Musk's companies. And they were, Musk and Trump were both like saying things that like kind of were soft bragging that could easily be looked at rigging the election. And I understand that there's reticence to go down that road and look like, these like batshit
Election deniers. Yeah.
Election deniers who, they did actually try to have a false slate of false electoral
Yeah.
slates. It's not like,
Yeah.
and the reason I'm like kind of rounding on this is I just think that like between that and the lack of like even real Democratic primaries in years, which we don't want to like look too hard at for the same reason, like I think that that's a big mistake, because at the end of the day, if our votes aren't like actually being counted properly, or there's some problem with the electoral mechanism, then like, first of all, we're looking at the other citizens in the country, like there are a bunch of like racist assholes, and maybe we're the overwhelming majority, and that's like illusory. And the point being, it would be a completely different strategy that we would have to undertake, and if that's the case, than it would be if like we really just need to like turn public opinion through like normal, like electoral stumping and stuff.
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that. And I
All right,
think-
so let me just summarize what you're saying is that you think that tactically speaking, we should be talking more about the stuff in Rockland County. I mean, I'll tell you, this is the thing, is that I've been through this cycle. And it was, in Ohio in 2004. And John Kerry even said he thought that, supposedly he had said that he thought that there were irregularities, or that there was something that fishy that went on there in 2004. I mean, I wonder why, if you have the ability to change the vote tally in Rockland County, and theoretically nationally, why you didn't do this in Wisconsin, if you're Elon Musk. I mean, you put all your chips on the table in Wisconsin. Now, this is not dispositive of anything, and I'm not, and I will be the first to say that I have not spent really any significant time in what's going on in Rockland County, and so but. At a 20,000 foot view, this is what I'm looking at. And I will also say, just like in terms of like how I want to spend my time, like we got stuff on the front burner right now. And I understand if we don't have free elections, then none of this ever matters. But my experience is that stuff will end up, could potentially just suck a lot of energy and resources and time that we need to deploy right now to stop a war, stop, a complete undermining of our healthcare system, stop the destruction of the administrative state. I mean, now I am sympathetic to the argument that if we don't have a real vote, then, all of that is for naught. But
right.
I need to see more evidence before I engage in that. You know what I mean?
I agree. I just think that absolutely. But I think we have to kind of commit a little bit to at least looking for that evidence, because
there are people doing that.
The odds of
there are people doing that.
What would even happen if they proved it, though? I don't think that it would even alter anything. I think if they could actually come up with evidence, and mathematically the odds of there not being, of all 7 swing states flipping, and there not being enough to like under the threshold of a recount, are infinitesimally small, and that's been like talked about since the election.
I know,
like,
but I mean, also, like, you know, there was a 99% chance that Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016. Trump did it without Elon Musk, but then he lost in 2020, equally small margin. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I get it historically. I mean, in this case, I think between Elon bragging about it and the Palantir partnered company, like this whole angle that I'm seeing, like
I'm happy. Let me put it this way. I'm happy.
We'd be fucked, man.
Listen,
there's nothing we could really do.
I'm happy there are people who are expending their time and their resources to it. Before it becomes something, you know, that is worth me or this show expending its time and resources, there has to be more there. Because there's other fires that are happening right now.
And I'll just say, for my part, the result needs to be more anomalous. And look, the statistically improbability is one thing. I'm not surprised Kamala lost. Like, I was freaking out about the way she ran that campaign the entire time, and maybe a more anomalous loss would surprise me more, but it didn't surprise me.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to say one more thing. If you
got to be super quick.
I saw a clip of a bounty hunter testifying at like some town council or whatever, and he was saying, or not, he wasn't testifying, he was standing up to speak, and he was saying that him and other bounty hunters were being offered $1,000 per undocumented immigrant that they brought in. So that there's a strong possibility that all these like masked ICE dudes who aren't showing their badges I because they're not even police officers.
Appreciate the call.
And I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, I first of all, they're bounty hunters. No ICE officials are police officers. They are bounty hunters. That's what they're doing. Many of them are paid by a government agency, but they are basically bounty hunters. And then it would not surprise me one iota if they were contracted. They're going to the IRS trying to get people. They're going to the FBI. They're trying to get people. At one point, they run out of people. The idea that they would be getting them from a J or whatever they're calling black. What was it? What was the mercenary force? I can't. Blackwater or J or whatever. I can't remember.
I never learned the new one. Yeah.
No, there's like 14 different ones. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. This is encouraging, though. Apparently, well, we can watch the video at Dodger Stadium. ICE was turned back, denied permission to come into Dodger Stadium. And then they denied it that they were doing. I mean, this is fascinating. Here is the, what is this? Let's look at this clip.
This is Jeremy Lindenfeld. Protesters gathered at Gate E of Dodger Stadium where DHS agents. I mean, that's the thing is like ICE denied that they were there. I mean, who knows if it was ICE, DHS, CBP. None of these Gestapo agents identify themselves.
Yes.
Even to the Los Angeles Dodgers, which means they're not telling you.
Go ahead. And then, do we have the footage of them driving away? Do we have that footage? And then, apparently, like at one point, I don't know if the stadium got wind of it, the Dodgers, but the cops end up escorting them away. Do we have it? I thought I had put it in there. Maybe I hadn't put that one in. I got confused. But there's footage. Check on Twitter. And they denied it. They denied that they were even there. And here it is. I think, yeah, here we go. Try that. This is an overhead shot, and you can see. You can't? Here we go. And this gives you a good overhead view of it here, of the protest. I don't know how ICE actually...
And new tonight.
Go ahead. This is a report from KHOU 11.
And new tonight, Immigration, Customs and Enforcement, or ICE, is denying it sent agents to Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles today. The team posting on social media, they denied the agents' request to access the parking lot. Word of immigration officials showing up drew a few protesters. ICE responding to the Dodgers post on X saying, quote, false, we were never there. The Department of Homeland Security said Border Patrol vehicles were in the parking lot briefly, but it had nothing to do with the team.
Oh, I guess we didn't see the them being driven out, but they were followed out by the cops. And they're just hanging out, I guess, theoretically, just like tailgating.
And you got to park your car somewhere.
You got to park your car somewhere. Maybe you want to go out to a game, hang out, chill out. Yeah, here they go. This is them driving away. No sound on this. But you can see the LAPD escorted them out of the parking lot. And it's too bad. These guys were just out there. They had their barbecues. They were just going to have a couple of dogs and just getting into the feel of the game. LA Dodgers want no part of these guys there.
Because I think reports were originally from citizens saying, why are the Dodgers letting these guys stage in their parking lot? And the Dodgers had to be like, well, we told them to get out of there.
California resistance. Sam, there's a video on Blue Sky from LA that ICE was only using road outside the stadium to transfer people from ICE arrests at Home Depot in Hollywood. Never planned on going into the parking lot. The Dodgers are using it for self-promotion. We're supposed to issue a statement in support of the community. Team has not done it yet. Dodgers supported Trump. I mean, regardless.
Good. Do that. If the Dodgers want to attack ICE for publicity in this moment, do it as cynically as you want to, please. Thank you.
Exactly. Oh, this is breaking news. A judge, supposedly, see if you can confirm this for me. Just Another Guy says a judge orders Mahmoud Khalil to be released on bail. It's conditioned. Yeah, Krusty Gnome, a couple of people. That's good news.
I mean, this was...
Zateo, breaking Mahmoud Khalil to be released from ICE detention, says Majid.
About time, Jesus.
Yep.
Since March 8th.
Insane.
Child born while he's in there.
Legally Brand. I'm a sexual assault law lawyer in the DMV area, and I've seen downward shift in how willing rape survivors are willing to report their rapes because they're so afraid of having to go to a police station or go to court with ICE raids going on. Rapists also threatening to call ICE on their victims if they report regardless of victim status. As a result, these rapists are just roaming freely amongst us, endangering us all. Also undocumented victims are ineligible for U visas if they don't report the crime to police. Calling from a 313 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Hey, I'm Nicholas. I'm from Detroit.
Nicholas from Detroit. What's on your mind?
When you guys were talking about Pete Hegseth earlier, I couldn't help but think of the opening scene of Fahrenheit 9/11, where Paul Wolfowitz is like licking that comb and combing his hair over.
Yep.
And in your opinion, are Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, are they some sort of mutation of this desire by neocons to be presentable but also vicious at the same time? Or is it just a coincidence and Pete Hegseth is a hatchet man who is willing to do anything for Trump, hence his appointment, but at the same time they still have, the deep state of military leaders come in situations like Iran right now?
Well, I think Hegseth is there because he's a yes man. That's it. Bottom line. Hegseth is there is because he's a yes man. I imagine that Tulsi Gabbard is in there because
they were anti-war for the campaign.
She provided some electoral sort of like, as a former Democrat, as a former Bernie person, she was part of the way of like, Bannon's idea of like bringing in former Bernie people. And they just, Trump was like, she seems good. She's like a TV7 maybe. So we can put her in charge of something. I honestly think that's what's going on there. And then
compared to Nikki.
And look, I don't know that Trump is being influenced by, a neocon establishment. They're certainly coming up now and providing sort of like undergirding or support. But I think this is really just a function of like Miriam Adelson and his calculation that these are my sort of benefactors. And I also suspect that there is a Saudi agenda of like, if this happens, it's not such a bad thing. I'm guessing, and I haven't seen much written about this, but like, where are the Saudis in this? Donald Trump is going by, Donald Trump doesn't care. It's really just a question of like, who's paid him, how much allegiance, what does he feel like he owes them? What's the good deal? And then also like, how is this going to impact his ability to make other deals? Or, there is a transaction or there's a series of transactions with him and his people, Witkoff, Kushner. The answer lies there. I don't know what it is, but that's where the answer lies.
And what do you think the over/under is on the right eventually, labeling Donald Trump as a stooge of Israel? Because we live in this world where it's okay for the right to hate Jews, but it's not okay for them to hate Israel. And us on the left are, expressing our discontent for Israel and our protection of Jews, and we're the bad guys for some reason. Do you ever see a world where, Donald Trump's allegiance, or if the media starts to, out him as a stooge of Israel, if that could bring these people into the light?
No, it ain't happening.
Media's going to do that.
It ain't happening.
Yeah.
Appreciate the call.
Have a good one.
Buckets and buckets. Sam, why do you keep ignoring Iran's recently refining uranium to 60%? I literally mentioned this yesterday. On Wednesday when I was on.
Okay, but the last 2 days, why did you ignore it?
Well, I ignored it yesterday. I was talking about it, except for I wasn't on the air, and so you didn't hear it.
Convenient.
Kind of seems purposefully deceitful. I literally said that they had literally walked through, Wednesday. They have refined uranium to 60%. They need 90% for just to have weapons grade uranium. Never mind a delivery system. It is absolutely foolish of them not to start to head down this road as these attacks show. Absolutely foolish of them.
Even like the women who are more, let's say, liberated are calling. I've seen men on the streets telling interviews were like, yeah, okay, I support the regime now going after nuclear weapons where I didn't before.
Of course. And after 4 years of Joe Biden refusing to make a deal, which I suspect was a function of his relationship or his people's relationship. I mean, you got McGurk on CNN, the guy, Brett McGurk, who, in Joe Biden's mental haze, and I'm not in any way absolving Joe Biden of responsibility, but it's quite clear this was Brett McGurk's policy. And this guy's out there promoting an attack on Iran. And for years, we wondered why didn't Biden make this deal quickly? And his response to October 7th and Israel's subsequent response made it quite clear that this was a policy agenda to not get back into this deal. So the idea that after 5 or 6 years, Iran starts to ramp up their enrichment program, of course they are. If they are not regretting not ramping it up to 90% and not actively having built a weapon, they're fools. They're fools. They're fools. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Mike from Portland.
Mike from Portland. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about ICE here and, the absolute war zone and burning down of the entire city.
Okay. Tell us.
Yeah, so that was just a little bit of a joke because it's literally one block.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying.
But unfortunately, that block has a school on it with a playground, apartments, and they're gassing up the place every single night now. People are out there protesting peacefully, and then when they want to bring a couple vehicles in or out, they come out, shove people to the ground. Some people were sharing stories that it's just really hard because people are being detained there, being searched wrongfully, and being violated. So people are coming back out after being held. These are protesters being held in a detainment facility for a couple hours, shackled. The cells are dirty, like boogers and feces and stuff like that, according to some folks. And obviously it's inhumane. They're keeping, immigrants in there as well, or, whoever they snatch up. So I just want to give a shout out to the people showing up there every single day, because they've had an encampment going for about 2 weeks now. It's been occupied for 2 weeks straight. And several people just getting arrested and hundreds getting gassed every day. And the gas they're using too is illegal internationally. So Portland banned the use of tear gas, but that's by the Portland Police Bureau, not, by the feds. So the feds are using things called CS gas and Adamsite. Mm-hmm. And these are gases that have cancer-causing agents, of course. And like I said, there's a school right there. When the wind picks up, you can feel it in your throat. It feels like a really tough allergy reaction, maybe to like fresh cut grass or something. It's really brutal. So yeah, just kind of wanted to update. We're also trying to get the city to pull the permit for them to operate in that building. So we're putting a lot of pressure on city council right now through 50, 51, PDX, and a couple other organizations, take down Tesla, things like that. So
great.
Can I just say on those gases?
Several protests coming up.
A lot of those gases sort of linger lower to the ground. So if you say want to walk your pet around it, or you have small children, they're going to take it to the face.
Appreciate the call. Appreciate the work you guys are doing.
Yep. Stay safe, y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Friends, Broseph, I inhaled CS gas in Hungary during the labor protest there in 2018. Awful. Very overwhelming stuff. Ramona Frankenstein. Sam, why have you been ignoring the fact that Iran has been very mean to deal leader Trump? 92 million people who want to murder our big, beautiful, wet president. Your silence is deafening. I think I smell burnt toast. Tim Gould, if there is regime change in Iran, do you think Trump will install Patrick Bet-David as the new Shah? Buckets and buckets again. 60% can be used as a dirty bomb. What other use does it have?
Okay, sure.
It can be used as a dirty bomb.
Deterrent.
As a deterrent. Like, why do we have nuclear? Why does Israel have nuclear weapons? Why haven't they signed the nuclear proliferation treaty? I mean,
yeah, we should all sign that and get rid of nukes.
At the heart of this is some assessment that the Iranian regime is completely irrational, which is exactly what we were told about Saddam Hussein. It is all just a predicate to invade. And let's be clear what a dirty bomb is. It's not a nuclear explosion. It is some other type of bomb that you use for explosive. I don't know, C8, or you could use dynamite, whatever. And it just creates a radioactive fallout. It's like a weapon of mass destruction. Chemical weapons, essentially. Or the idea that Iran would use a dirty bomb unless they were facing like some type of imminent existential threat is absurd. Because the moment that dirty bomb goes off, they are all dead. As you can see, Israel didn't even need a predicate to bomb them. The United States is on the verge of bombing them without a predicate. It's a hypothetical, potential, possible future threat that might allow us to drop a tactical nuke on them. The idea, if Iran was responsible for a dirty bomb, it would be complete suicide. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, why did they get into the first nuke deal with Obama? They were adhering to it. Why did they do this? If they're completely irrational and suicidal, as you want to make it out. I mean, it's the
same thing that almost got the world destroyed during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like, we encircle countries, and then the second they have any sort of capacity, we freak out and go into hysterics. And, a huge part of our, military leaders and stuff want to preemptively nuke and bunker buster these countries.
All right, one more call. Final call of the week. Calling from a 617 area code.
Hey, is this me?
Yes, it is you. You're calling from Massachusetts.
Sam from Alston.
Sam from Alston. What is it? Bun Ratties? Is that still there? Bun Ratties? No.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, no. Why, are you under the age of 75?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately?
I think they filled the Back Bay since you lived there. It's a pretty nice neighborhood now.
What is this thing I hear about? There's bridges over the river?
There's a few of them. Yeah,
all right.
You can get to Cambridge on foot.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
You don't have to take a boat.
Well, I want to talk about Worcester.
All right.
I do some work there, and I have access to the utility records. And I don't know if you saw that manhole that exploded a few weeks ago.
No.
A few months ago at this point. Yeah, it got sent like 50 feet in the air. I don't know if they officially concluded what caused it, but I looked at the pipes in that intersection, and in one direction, it was from 1912.
Wow.
In the other direction, it was from 1913.
Wow.
All iron. There's no corrosion protection for iron, so they get like dime-sized holes, and that just leak.
Oh, geez.
The oldest one I've seen in Worcester was from 1898.
Oh. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, they're cutting a lot of the replacement funding to focus on electrical infrastructure, but it's not enough to actually divert houses off of natural gas. So it's a bit of a problem, bit of a safety problem, especially all over the East Coast.
I bet. And Worcester is growing exponentially. I mean, they've added 60,000 people in, I want to say, 30 years.
Oh, yeah. Everyone that's getting priced out of Boston is moving there.
Yep. That's what they say in Worcester. They've been saying this for as long as I've been alive, and probably more, that Boston can't grow to the east. But it really didn't start kicking in until the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's the only place you can find the accent these days.
The accent?
Yeah, it's gone.
Dude, are you serious?
I mean, maybe parts of Southie. I think everyone's faking it at this point.
All right. Whatever.
Worcester. Anyways, have a good one. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Left is best.
All right. Whatever. What accent do people in Worcester have? Jay Tingle, I think you mean pretext, not predicate. Whatever.
I don't know. I think both kind of work.
I think both works. Folks, that's the end of our call-in portion. Granular. Jon Stewart lifted an old Crimmins joke during a recent live appearance with The Daily Show. He said that he's not worried about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism will be just fine. And it's clear in his delivery that he knows it's not his own and feels reverent. Thought you might appreciate. I mean, I would imagine there are writers there who, I mean, I'm sure there are writers there who are friends with Barry. I'm sure Barry would appreciate those jokes living on past him.
Actually, you probably can't use predicate.
Really?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a.
Just the other day you were saying you can use whatever word it is.
I know, but sometimes it's not even close.
Is it really not even close?
Not super close. I mean, maybe there's another outside grammar usage, but no.
Really?
A subject, something that is affirmed or denied of a subject in a proposition in logic. A term designating a property or relation.
What about found or based something on?
Usually
found or based something on.
The theory is
it's
predicated.
The second.
Oh yeah, there you go. This is a little bit late. This is okay. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
The theory
thank
is
you.
predicated on recent findings.
Thank you. Thank you. And screw yourself, Jay Tingle.
Not surprising that came from Jay Tingle.
A lot of the language I use is antiquated because I use it from my youth. Teacher Dan, what was that bit you used to do years ago when you and some other guy sat around doing a calling talk show, like a couple of guys from Southie?
Ken,
and Ken, Michael and I. And they come back. PB&J calling from 818 about Iran. All right, sorry. Chomov Link. Happy Casual Friday, folks. The 2025 British and Irish Lions Tour starts tonight with a game against Argentina men's national team in Dublin, Ireland, before going to Australia for a few weeks, which will include 3 games against the Australian men's national team. You have no idea how much I've been looking forward to this. You can probably guess what sport I'm referring to. I remember Emma correctly predicting South Africa to win the 2023 Men's Rugby World Cup. Has Emma thought of starting a sports show on the side?
Is that a joke? Did she actually make a rugby prediction?
It's very possible. Mega MCA. Trump has never in his life spoken like that. If I were a high school English teacher, I'd make him write an essay about plagiarism. Jay Tingle. I think you mean pretext, not predicate. I think I meant predicate. Jay Tingle. I think you meant to say apologies, Sam. You were right. Jerry's Cahill. I don't know what that means, but I have a feeling it's not great. In retro, weapons of mass destruction, and in and of itself, the phrase was a tell. It made us believe the lack of specificity meant all weapons, but that includes what it actually was. We don't effing know. Same thing today. Also, I mean, I can't remember what was the big gas that they were talking about at the time. Maybe it was anthrax. I can't remember what it was, but it was like one of those things where you'd need those like 55 sarin. Yeah, I think it was sarin gas, like 55-gallon barrels. And you'd need like a dozen of them to kill 100 guys on a battlefield or something to that effect. Like it was very effective if it was in a, in a subway system or something. If you're in an enclosed environment, maybe. But, what did it mean to weapons of mass destruction? So general as to mean nothing. A dirty bomb. How many people, how are you transporting this? So you can send a 60% enriched uranium through FedEx. That can be blown up. I mean,
be scared.
You know what they could do? They could maybe convince, send a mole into the Trump administration. And if there is a pandemic, convince the administration to pretend like it doesn't exist. Right? And this seems far-fetched. But even after coming out with a vaccine for it, have a whole movement dedicated towards not taking the vaccine. And I bet you could probably kill 1.5 million people that way. And then also create downstream long-term impact to health and undermine it. I bet you could do that.
Also, I would suggest if we don't want to be targeted by Iran for terrorist attacks or whatever, or any country, don't help a country bomb them, would be the first thing I would do.
Blame the victim. Blame the victim, Matt. Henry, tell David to keep his wife away from the Delta 8. It does occur naturally, but not at levels sold to consumers. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Before the cause, I'm putting on my tinfoil hat and waiting for Vance to work his Pope magic on that President Trump so the PayPal mafia can start getting what they paid for. All right, 5 more of these. En Bonora. Remember that a lot of the Democrats supporting Bush and Cheney drive to war in Iraq said if they supported it, it would help oversight and make the war run more properly. And of course, it did no such thing. Not that they believed any of those things that they were saying. I think I had Russ Feingold on this show. I don't remember when it was. Years and years ago, saying that he sat in a room, heard all the arguments as to why this was bullshit about Iraq. And then the senators went out on the floor and voted to give Bush authorization.
Profiles in courage.
Future reactionary. Blue Georgia missed an opportunity in that clip extravaganza to include 2-week scene from Verhoeven's Total Recall. Don't tell anyone, but I'm watching on Rumble these days since that site doesn't seem to be aware of my browser's ad blocker. Kentucky boy. Botox must be insanely healthy. Look at how many times Kristi Noem has been hospitalized recently. Oh, unhealthy.
Shout out to all the 10 people on Rumble.
All right. Andrew from D.C. I have a minor discrete math. A predicate is used as a statement that can be proved true or false, depending on which variables are input into the predicate. Sam is correct in the logician sense, too. Seder supremacy.
Now, the proof will be in the pudding, and I'm sure I will understand everything that's happening.
And the final I am of the week. Sage Sunday. The second Emma leaves the show, it gets so effing granular about grammar. Matt, Brian, Emma in absentia. Great week, folks. We'll see you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot lights shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you?